Legend has it that Alexander the Great conquered the world with a copy of Homer under his pillow. Today, Homer's account is largely disputed, but what isn't is Alexander's conquests, and that he was driven by something extraordinary to conquer the greatest empire the world had ever seen at the time, Persia. In Homer's Iliad, the mythical story of the fall of Troy, the main character, Achilles, recites a conversation with his mother he had had years earlier. If I hold out here and lay siege to Troy, my journey home is gone, but my glory never dies. If I voyage back to the fatherland I love, my pride, my glory dies true, but the life left me will be long. Book 9. Alexander's actions belie someone who tried to emulate the story of Achilles, and someone who had also had intended to die young, but have his legacy live on forever. His reckless regard for his own safety got him injured and nearly killed on numerous occasions. Whether Alexander thought Homer's stories to be factual or not is not important. He acted as if they were true. Myth, which is the collective dreams of a society, according to Jordan Peterson, does not have to be even true for individuals or even a society in general to act as if they are, making myth become reality, as with Alexander. Present-day societies can also be beholden too. If a society acts as if myths are true, they also can make them into a form of reality, just as with Alexander. The most prominent and self-destructive of these being perpetuated today is that American society was only built upon slavery and racism, such as with the 1619 Project, and that, even today, this continues in the form of systemic racism. This rewriting of history, focusing only on slavery and racism, not only devalues the history that it's supposed to be helping, the history of slavery, but far worse, it is enslaving new generations to something that will hold many back and lead to the same societal self-destruction much as it had with the former Confederate States slaveholders of the South, whose culture, according to Thomas Searle, the African Americans have since widely adopted to their own complete detriment. As Thomas Searle explains, slavery has been around for thousands of years, and there are no civilizations who don't have it as a stain on their history. Who knows how many white indentured servants were sold on the same slavery blocks as African Americans, with both groups being treated like animals. Not to forget also that 1 million or more Europeans were sold into slavery between 1530 and 1780 AD. The word slave, after all, comes from the Slavs, white Europeans, so it has not been restricted to any one group, it affected all. Therefore, scapegoating one group based on skin colour is dangerous and self-destructive. But first, it's worth considering how society itself operates. According to John Searle, we use collective intentionality to create our society. While there are always outliers, it only needs a sizable majority for a practice or system to become part of the society. We give linguistic representations to objects, such as wedding rings, for example, which have a function in our society, and we build institutions around the idea of marriage and confer onto people a certain status, and we build upon that with growing complexity, like government and tax benefits and even maternity leave. Yet just as we use words to construct society, creating socially acceptable limits that most generally stay inside of, we can also create damaging constraints on ourselves, operating even at the subconscious level that limits both the individual and society itself. The question is, therefore, are modern African Americans enslaving themselves with their own myths? After all, why would you work hard to improve yourself if it can all just be taken away, which is what social justice is teaching people? Thomas Searle lays out in his book how the culture of modern African Americans has not only taken on the southern redneck culture, but also continues to proliferate the myth of their enslavement by their so-called white oppressor. Despite, of course, the contradictory evidence suggesting otherwise, that African Americans can even become president. And this myth is being twisted and manipulated by ideologues who care little for regular people and mostly, like the BLM founders, are only in it to enrich themselves. That is why, after all, BLM only matters every 4 years. Recently, US politician Cori Bush tweeted that black people still aren't free. Ironically, though, she may be right, but not because of the reasons she thinks. Other myths, like cops hunting and killing black men, is also something pushed by the elites. Yet with the massive uptake in crime because of the defund the police movement, it mostly affects African American communities, the ones everyone claims to care about. For African Americans who hold on to a distorted picture of the past and present, only continue to enslave themselves. The anti-intellectual, anti-white vernacular has become part of the African American societal mindset, with their society adopting these ideas both consciously and unconsciously. For example, no one in their community wants to be viewed by their peers as acting white or being called an Uncle Tom. This, though, is completely self-destructive and pushed by the media and supposed leaders in their community like Cori Bush and now Ibram Kendi. Kendi claims the only remedy to past discrimination is present and future discrimination, such as reparations, which is something that will never happen but used to manipulate people to gain wealth and power. Even math is now being considered racist because there is a disparity between the results of different groups. Somehow is considered a white construct and used as evidence of systemic racism. Yet the irony is that the Greeks gained their knowledge of math, most notably Pythagoras, in Egypt. It is hardly a white construct if its origins were from Africa. Not every disproportionate outcome is due to racism. There are other factors at play.
That any process to ascribe any status to any group of people, equality, inferiority, superiority, must necessarily reduce freedom.
Well, of course, it is true that descendants of slavery started from a lower position than particularly the whites of the North. So did every other immigrant group that has come to America since, and yet they succeeded because they didn't have the proverbial monkey of slavery on their back. Most notably, Nigerian and Ghanaian Americans whose average household income is higher than the median white income. Following Kendi's logic, this disparity could only be due to racism against whites and has nothing to do with the endeavour or hard work they brought with them. Any outcome that shows a disparity between black and white is now racist, no matter what it is. Yet nothing is so simple. There are many reasons for disparities, and yes, sometimes even racism, but it's certainly not the only reason, nor the main cause. Just as not all African Americans are held back by the redneck culture their society inherited, but it is this self-enslavement myth being pushed by the media and grievance mongers at the expense of the African American community that is a large factor in what is enslaving them, and will continue to do so until there is a change in mindset that looks forward and is not beholden to the past. To quote an old Russian proverb, forget the past and lose an eye. Dwell on the past and lose both eyes. That's why history matters.